10 match weeks ago, we predicted the Premier League table, and now we're going to do it again. I'm joined by John McKenzie and JJ Bull to see just how wrong they were last time. But it's only been 10 games, I hear everybody saying.
It's only been 10 games, Joe. Hi.
Yeah. Well, luckily we've got Mark Carey here to explain why 10 games might just be enough for us to feel a little more confident.
We're just 10 games into the season, but is the Premier League done and dusted already? Well, not quite, but evidence does suggest that we might not see many changes from here on in. Because research looking at match data from 22 seasons, exploring the correlation between the league table after 10, 20, and 30 games, found that statistically speaking, there was a strong relationship between where a team were after 10 games and where they finished at the end of the season. Of course, that doesn't mean that we aren't going to see changes in the table, like with Spurs last season. Plus, those smaller differences in league position can be crucial, especially at the top end, where 2 points could be the difference between a title win or a Champions League spot. But the findings of the wider analysis still remain that even as early as November, we can get a pretty decent projection of each club's final position come May.
There we go. Okay, thank you, Mark. Okay, well, first stop then is to look at what you guys predicted 10 match weeks ago before the Premier League season started and compare it to what the table looks like right now. Here it is.
What a great table. I'm only slightly really wrong.
Yeah, a little bit wrong from you. What about you?
Yeah, slightly really wrong too.
Yeah, well, we'll go through step by step. And the first place we're going to start with...
It's only been 10 games.
No, I know, but do you want to see the Mark Carey clip again?
Yes.
Okay, roll it again.
We're just 10 games into the season.
You got it, yeah?
Yes, I do now, thank you.
We can always play it again later if you need
One more?
Maybe later.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. First place to start, of course, the team that is furthest away from where John and JJ predicted. Now, thankfully, you both said 17th for Nottingham Forest, and let me tell you, that's not where Nottingham Forest are. JJ, Nottingham Forest are in third. So what's happened there? Why were you so wrong?
Well, Nottingham Forest are third in the Premier League, and you might be thinking, well, they must be really overperforming their underlying numbers. That's how that's happened. That's crazy. But actually, they're only overperforming by 3 places, according to Opta's underlying numbers table. And how they've done that is with quite a clear tactical style, but mostly, I would say, a focus on being hard to beat or hard to score goals against. Because they have the second best defence in the league, both in terms of underlying numbers, expected goals against, and actual goals conceded of just 7, which is obviously not a very lot of goals. So, and that's definitely a sentence. And to be good out of possession, often it helps to just block and make sure people can't get at you. And that's probably one of the reasons why they have the 11th lowest average possession in the top 5 European leagues this season. And in fact, that was actually 7th before they played West Ham, who gave them a lot of the ball, because West Ham, as we'll come on to, are really bad. Another reason they've managed to not concede so many goals and therefore be high up the table is because they are very good at defending set pieces now. And last season they conceded 23 of their 68 goals from set pieces, which is 4 more than the relegated Luton and Sheffield United. Now, what's interesting about this is that last season Forest had a dedicated set piece coach, but he left in the summer to become the Southampton under-21 manager. And this season they've only let in 1 goal. So you might think, well, it was all that terrible set piece coach's idea, but we don't know if that was what it was. I think more likely is the individuals they have to defend those set pieces, because they have very specific player roles in their team now, including Milenkovic, a centre-back they signed from Fiorentina, I believe. That's correct, isn't it? Yes.
Who's been amazing.
He's been really good, but he's really good especially at being tall and physical. It really helps with set pieces.
I'm not very good at that.
No. Joe's better at being tall than
I'm
us.
good at that, yeah.
So basically they're just better at defending all over the pitch, but they have very specific defined player roles within the system that Nuno, Espirito, Santo has put into the team. Milenkovic is my destroyer CB, who can absolutely just smash balls away inside the box. Both boxes, he's good at that. They have fast fullbacks who like to overlap and get forward. They have 2 ball-winning midfielders in the midfield, just another centre-back and a goalie, not named there. Then they have a playmaker, who's Morgan Gibbs-White, and they've got Elliot Anderson, who's done really well when he's come on in that position as well. Then they have fast wingers, and a target man. So what you have is a team that can sit deep and block, or sit at midpoint and block, and then they get the ball forward into space to attack. And the more you draw teams out, the easier it is to get into that space to get forward. That's always not reliable. You don't have so much pressure, which is why Chris Wood is so important in this season, not just because he scored loads of goals, he's a great poacher, but also it means you can go from back to forward really quickly, and then you can bring everyone up, so you're not constantly being attacked.
So it's nothing revolutionary, really. They're just doing their jobs really well, right?
I think so, yeah. It's not revolutionary, and it's the kind of thing that you need. It sounds silly, but you need things to go your way to make it work. It's very easy in this kind of football where a couple of things don't go your way, suddenly you're losing 1-0, and then you can't sit back, defend, and try and counter-attack. The game state's really important in this style of football. Like you can see this sort of position here, you can see they can build up, their players are in position to play through, and so teams don't know exactly how to press against them, what really to do. West Ham don't know how to press against anyone, it doesn't matter. So what they'll often do is they could build out from the situation, but as I said, the goalie will often go long to Chris Wood, who can take the ball down amongst loads of players. Then they have two wide, fast forwards to be able to go forward with it, and a playmaker right next to them, along with ball winners closing up so they can try and win the second ball. All very specific and closed. But out of possession is really important in how they do that. And what they do is they engage late, they create space to attack by doing that, and they show the ball wide, making the pitch quite narrow, but also using the touchline as your extra defender. So you can see they often sit off, let them have the ball as long as you want, and then they show the ball wide. So good Gibbs White will come across to try and show the ball wide, or just back to the centre back, and then they'll try and engage on the other side, trying to keep it always condensed to the wide areas. Another example, West Ham with the ball, sitting well off them, they're not pressing them high, showing the ball wide, and then they start to engage to try and lock people up. So the ball from West Ham, the only option this guy's really got is to go down the channel, and that often ends up for a throw-in, which is exactly what happens here. So the out-of-possession stuff is designed to make them really hard to break down, and that also plays into their attacking strengths as well. When they get forward, they're also not averse to taking a shot from outside the box, which is exciting. You can see that they've got 41% of their shots come from outside the box, which is good. And when you shoot from outside the box, you might not score, but you might force the goalie into making him a save, and then you might have players running in, like fast wingers, who can then try and get on the end of that, which really helps as well with trying to create chances, I guess, just from the goalkeeper knocking the ball long to you. Now, the thing with Forest is I don't think it's sustainable all the way through the season. I think they're playing really well now, but things are going their way, and eventually that will stop happening.
And presumably teams might change the way they play against Forest as well.
Exactly.
Right?
So I think what you saw with even like West Ham is that you don't want to go forward onto them, because when you do that, it's exactly what they want, and teams will start trying to give Forest more of the ball. Then it's up to them to be good with it, and that's maybe where they lack a few players who can really open up tight blocks. I think Gibbs White is good at doing that. Elliot Anderson's proven to be quite good, but if you're going to rely on creating chances from wide wingers running inside and there isn't any space, then that's kind of narrow down after a while. But you do well in the league by having a good defensive record, and they have the second best defensive record in the entire league. And this kind of football does work sometimes.
I mean, it seems clear they're going to not finish 17th, John. Do you concur with JJ's reasoning about why he was wrong? Is it the same for you?
Forest have been really hard to read the last couple of seasons because of the just sheer amount of transfer activity that they've had going on there. And I think as a result, people have struggled to actually read their proper level. So they obviously brought in a lot of players, and a lot of those players are very good. And I think because they performed badly in the last few seasons, I think a lot of people just expected it to be, same old from them this time around. But interesting hearing JJ talking about how they're really leaning into not having the ball and being a counter-attacking side. But in those games where they actually have had more possession than their opponents, they've not actually lost a single one of those games. They've drawn 2 and they've won 2. And I think often when a team that gets a bit of momentum from being a counter-attacking side, they often drop off when suddenly, as you say, the game state changes and teams start allowing them to have the ball and say, come and break us down this way. They've proven that they can do that this season as well, which makes me think that maybe it's a little bit more sustainable than it might be with other counter-attacking sides.
OK, so it's time to place Nottingham Forest as our first team. Would you kindly move, JJ, Nottingham Forest from 17th to your new predicted position?
I put them in 10th, didn't I? There we go, yeah.
You've put them in 10th. OK, so you think there'll be some drop-off. John, what about you? Where have you put them?
10th.
Okay, all right, that's good. There we go, 10th. That's what we think, 10th. Okay, moving on. From a team overperforming their XG to a team performing their XG and it's bad. That's Manchester United, yeah. Now, before we get started with John on Manchester United, in production for this show, JJ assured John and I and producer Don that on the last show, we would find a clip of you predicting not only the finishing position of Manchester United, but also that they would sack Ten Hag around late October, early November time, and that we should find that clip and put it in at the beginning of the show.
I remember saying it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you remember saying it, because unfortunately producer Don was unable to locate any evidence of that being the case.
Because as I've been saying, their underlying numbers last season and going into this season looked like they were going to be like 13th, 14th, but that's ridiculous. And I knew they would fire Ten Hag around November time. That makes sense. I've said it 1,000 times.
It's great. Well, listen, producer Don is still looking through the rushes from that filming shoot. So there's a scenario in which it was cut out. If it exists, it will play here. If it doesn't exist, it won't play here. Let's all wait.
Well, I think Man United might end up losing their manager halfway through the season, and then someone else comes in. That's why they rescued themselves to 7th. That's why I put them in 5th originally. Well, I'm glad he found the clip. There you go.
There we go. Okay, let's start with you, John, then. Currently, Manchester United are in 13th, and, kind of lucky to be there. They've been abysmal, haven't they? I suppose the main question with Manchester United now is, given that you predicted them to be in 6th place, do you think that the introduction of Ruben Amorim is enough to bring them up to your level of prediction, or will you be changing, do you think?
I will be changing it slightly. I won't be changing it a lot, because I think we still have enough of a points gap between where they are and where they've been predicted that it's not a huge amount of points for them to overcome. And I think, when we were making these predictions, we had at the back of our mind this idea that either Manchester United were going to do okay under Erik ten Hag, in which case they would be with the squad they have around this kind of area, or as JJ said, they were going to lose the manager and that they would bring in another manager, and there was a chance then that the squad would start performing at the level that they were supposed to be at. So yeah, I'm sort of happy with where I've got them. I'll probably drop them down a couple of spaces, but that's only on the basis of the fact they've had a poor start to the season. I still think from this point onwards they should perform as a sort of top 6, 7, 8th team.
I mean, it's interesting. You say the points gap isn't that significant. It really isn't. They're on 12 points in 13th at the moment. Aston Villa are currently in 6th place, are on 18 points. Chelsea in 4th also on 18 points. So the gap is really only 6 points to that top 4. It doesn't feel completely insurmountable that a new manager could come in and overcome that.
Yeah, and we've seen it before when someone comes in at Man United and they are suddenly rejuvenated, galvanised, and much, much better. The players are much better than they're currently showing, I would say, in that team. I think the squad suits what Amorim will do with them. There will be certain problems that they'll need to kind of iron out. So I don't think it'll be perfect. I don't think they'll fly up to like 5th, 4th, something like that. But I think they'll have lots of games where they win in a row. And it's only, the difference in points really is only about 3 wins here or there, which is like, I think Forest is going to drop down. I think someone like United will climb up. But the thing is, like I said, I thought this would happen all along because underlying numbers showed that, which is why I said that in the clip that we've obviously shown. And which is why I think they're going to finish in exactly the same position I thought they were going to, which is going to be 7th.
You're saying 7th. Okay, move them in.
Okay, here they go. They're there.
And John, you said you thought you were going to tweak slightly. What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm going to drop them down 1, just because I think that the way that some of the other teams have started means that they're going to...
Have you prepared ahead of time? Have you picked exactly the same? Is this so I can't punish any of you individually?
Yeah, we're solidarity.
You formed a union of prediction.
We have, yeah.
Good Lord. Okay, fine. Well, there we go. That's Manchester United. And if you're interested in Manchester United, watch our show from last week, by the way. There's a good 30 minutes of in-depth analysis to quench even the thirstiest drinker. Okay, moving on now. We've got a collection of 3 teams to get through. West Ham, Palace, and Wolves. All of these teams way worse than we thought they were going to do. I think the current Premier League table shows them far below where our expectations were. So let's start with West Ham, who I've heard people say are the worst team in the Premier League at the moment.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you recall, JJ, but I remember how excited John was about them at the beginning of the season.
I think they've got one of the best attacking units in the league from a player point of view.
Yeah, and I believe John. And he may well be proven to be correct when someone comes in to replace Fulham Lopetegui, which I think will probably happen at some point in the season.
Right.
Because right now West Ham are really bad, and I've been watching a bit of them to try and work out why I think that is. And I think I've got some key reasons as to why, if you'd like to know what they are.
I'd love to know what they are.
Okay. When I see West Ham play, what I see is a team that lacks intensity, aggression, physicality, and any sort of speed or like tempo. They play really slow passes. And what manifests on the pitch with what they do is that they play loads of slow, short passes around the back, and they never play through the middle. In fact, they have a 24%, the joint lowest amount of possession in the middle of the pitch. It all tends to be out wide. And what happens is that most of the shot-creating actions and touches of the team end up with wide players, specifically Aaron Wan-Bissaka.
I remember this being Manchester United's problem last season.
Now, Wan-Bissaka is a decent player and would do well. I don't think you want to build an attack around him. I don't think they're trying to do that either, but I think this is what is happening. We can look at the team and just see kind of why this might be. Because West Ham have kind of relied on Antonio for a long time as their forward. He's not always available. When he is available, it makes all the difference because he can run balls into the channel, he can hold up play, he gives them an out ball. When they don't have him, they don't have an out ball and they end up having to play through lines, which they do very, very poorly. Antonio is obviously good at chasing channel balls and trying to hold it up. But when they don't have him, they lack physicality. So you end up with Jared Bowen playing through the middle, or Kudus and Paquetá, just like players who aren't very physical, can't really hold the ball up. But what you have also is that Rodriguez and Souček aren't fantastic players, or Alvarez when he's in there. They're not great at getting the ball forward through lines. They're not progressive passers. They are more on the kind of still David Moyesian type, be solid, be hard to break down, that sort of thing. West Ham are neither hard to break down nor are they good at passing. What ends up happening is the ball keeps going wide to these players out wide, not him. And then what the player that is free, whether by design by opposition players, because Wan-Bissaka isn't going to hurt you really with possession. His numbers creatively aren't that great. He creates a lot of shots, but not high value ones. They leave him free to be able to do most of the attacking. So sometimes Emerson will come across, they have a 3 like this. Wan-Bissaka is the one who's often forward. And you can see how this plays out, because when we look at the numbers that they have, the second most shot creating actions for West Ham this season so far is from Aaron Wan-Bissaka. So their most attacking players really are Jared Bowen, Wan-Bissaka, Kudus and Paquetá. He's creating more than Paquetá. He's in an off season, which is also relevant. But their touches in the final third. So like the front 3 really is Bowen, Kudus and Wan-Bissaka. I don't think it's the best idea in the world to have Wan-Bissaka as one of your leading creative players or one of the ones you're relying on in the final third. And you can even see from an example against Spurs why I think specifically they're so bad and where you see the lack of aggression and intensity. And I think this must come from the manager, but also individual players. So this is a goal that Spurs score against West Ham. West Ham don't put any pressure on anyone ever with the whole thing. So they're wide. What happens often is that Jared Bowen will drop back into this back. You think it's a 5, it's actually a 6 they end up doing.
Safety in numbers.
Well, perhaps, but they're trying to show the ball wide, but they're also spread quite thin. Anyway, so the ball goes wide to the player out in the wing. Jared Bowen should engage, doesn't do it quite early enough. Wan-Bissaka is not really close to where this player should be, mostly looking after space. And so then the ball can be played in behind, and you can see that West Ham are just leaving massive amounts of space free in the edge of the box because there's no real shape here. There's no protection of lines. This player can turn back, then they start chasing the ball again, like just a pack of dogs basically. Just no one's really organised, no one's in a set position. The ball can be placed back to Bissouma, who can just finish through loads of bodies. It's a lack of intensity, a lack of aggression, lack of organisation, but they have really good attacking players, and so they're able to create chances sometimes that lead to goals. Like Kudus is amazing, Paquetá is amazing, Antonio's really good.
Right. Well, they're currently in 14th place in the Premier League. Who's to say where they will finish? Oh no, I guess you're to say where they'll
Yes, we're to say.
finish. Where will you be moving West Ham to based on all of the information that you've just provided, JJ?
Well, I'm going to put them, it's not far away from where I had them, I'm going to put them 14th.
Oh, so you're just moving down 1?
Yeah, but it's because although they are bad, I think, like I said with Man United and Erik ten Hag, I think Lopetegui will probably lose his job at some point, which will be sad for him, but probably better for that team.
Might stabilise.
Unless something changes and something comes together. I just don't see it.
Okay. What about you, Jon? You had West Ham in 10th, and I know you were keen on their attacking outfit ahead of the season. Defensively, though, it sounds like.
Yeah, I've never really been a fan of Lopetegui, but I thought that West Ham had a good enough attacking unit to be able to sort of carry them to mid-table. So that's why I had them in 10th, but yeah, they've started really badly. So I'm probably going to drop them down just on the basis of how other teams have been performing this season. So I've got them down in... Actually 13th, not quite the same.
Oh, thank the Lord. The first one where
We
we've
are
got a
way
different...
closer than I thought we were going to be in some of these.
Well, I guess Mark Carey predicted it, didn't he? He said, What did he say?
Roll the clip.
10 games.
Let's stay with you, Jon, for Crystal Palace, another team that are far, far worse than we thought they would be. Crystal Palace currently in 17th place, 7 points from 10 games. It's a bit of a disaster for them. Obviously, they lost some important players over the summer, and they're still kind of, trying to work their way into this new era, aren't they? What is your summation of their season so far?
The story of Palace's season for me so far is how badly they've managed to replace Michael Olise. They sold Michael Olise to Bayern Munich, 60 million euros in the summer, and they just haven't really replaced his output at all, despite the fact they brought in 3 attacking players, Eddie Nketiah, Ismail Assar and Daichi Kamada as well. This is goals and assists that Palace put up last season. So you can see Mateta, then you've got Olise in the second spot here. A huge amount of production coming from him. And then we've got Eze, Ayew, Edouard, Anderson. Interestingly enough, 4 of these players no longer play for the club. So Olise's gone, but also Ayew, Edouard and Anderson has gone. So if we fast forward to this season now, look at the same data, you can see Mateta's still here, Eze's still in the 3rd spot. But we look at the other players now who are filling those spots up. None of them are the players that were brought in to replace Michael Olise. And the worrying thing, I think, is that you've got Guehi here, centre-back with 2 goals. You've got Lacroix producing an assist here. And then just two assists from Mitchell and Munoz, who are the two wing backs. What Palace needed to do was recreate Michael Elise's output in the aggregate. 60 million euros is a nice sum of money, but they're not going to be able to buy the same kind of player with 60 million euros. They're going to have to buy other players, break it down, and they obviously bought 3 players in the end with that money. But when you're trying to recreate a player in the aggregate, you've got to spread it around the team because you can't play all those 3 players in the same position at the same time. And so what I think they should have done is they should have actually tried to upgrade in other areas. So Mitchell and Munoz, both of the wing backs, those are 2 really good areas where you could maybe improve, get a few more assists, a few more goals. They haven't done that, and as a result, they're in a real trouble because the 3 attacking players they brought in aren't filling that gap, and now the wing backs aren't really doing a particularly good job of it either.
Okay, so on that basis then, John, where are you going to move Crystal Palace to? Because you had them in 11th at the beginning of the season, currently 17th, as we've said. What are you thinking?
Well, I think they've started to turn a corner more recently. They've had some good results. They beat Spurs, obviously. I think I had them as sort of the best of the rest with some of the mid-table sides, but I'm going to drop them a little bit further down now because of the start they've had to 14th.
14th, okay. JJ, what about you?
Yeah, I think the Elise loss was going to be enormous for them. I didn't think it'd be that huge. I thought they replaced them with something that would make it work better.
Because you had them in 9th.
You
were a bit more confident
Well,
than
I was really enjoying watching them last season. I thought it was really working, but I think they've had various, not injury problems, but there's like squad problems. They can't really work out who their settled team is. I think Wharton's now injured, or he was at some point anyway.
Yeah.
You've got Doucouré, who has been out for a while, so their midfield 2, which is hugely important, the midfield's most important part of your team, hasn't really been there, which is therefore why I was completely wrong, and I'm going to put them way down below West Ham.
Okay, well, what about Wolverhampton Wanderers then, JJ? Because right now they are dead last in the Premier League. 10 games, only 3 points. I mean, that is truly woeful. You had them at 10th ahead of the season, so quite wrong.
Sometimes I am wrong, and on this occasion, yes, I absolutely was. I'm trying to remember why I thought they'd be higher than I thought they were. I think when I look through the squad and the players they have, I think they have good players, and therefore they should do well.
Right.
But they've had lots of issues. We talked about this in a previous episode of this show. They sold Max Kelman, haven't really replaced him. They sold Pedro Neto, haven't been able to replace him really. Brought 2 young wingers in who just haven't been able to do anything like what he could do. And Gary Neal's changed them from playing with a back 5 to a back 4 to injury problems. It's basically not working very well. But a lot of folk were wondering whether they were just unlucky. We talked about this in a previous episode of this very show. But the underlying numbers show that they're not really unlucky. They're kind of where they should be in the league, which is, well, they're bottom now, but they should maybe be second bottom, but they're only bottom because Southampton got a draw.
They won their last game, so they've been leapfrogged at the weekend, yeah.
There we go. So it's not going that well. The thing people say they were unlucky about them is that their fixture list was really difficult to start off the season with, and that is true, it was. And they lost all of those games quite convincingly. So I don't know why it was unlucky. The thing is...
What's the thing?
When we look at all the underlying numbers with Gary O'Neill's teams, some interesting things pop up. For example, they have expected goals, the 7th least expected goals of any team since he joined Wolves. And they've also got the 2nd worst expected goals against of any team since he joined Wolves. These are bad numbers. So you might think, well, maybe Wolves are just rubbish, right? Maybe that's what it is.
Maybe.
And if we look at what happened at Bournemouth, it's...
Who are now great.
Who are excellent now. They're fantastic. Love
Yeah.
Bournemouth. What you see here is that his Bournemouth team were sat with the 5th lowest expected goals, and they also had the 5th worst expected goals against.
Right.
So the underlying numbers are saying that that's what it should be like.
And the common theme is Gary O'Neill.
Yes.
Is that fair, John?
I think since he's been in the Premier League, yeah, he's had pretty poor numbers. And I was asking the question at the beginning of the season whether or not that was going to continue, that he was going to overperform his numbers and finish sort of much further ahead than where the numbers suggested. And it seems as though this season has finally been the one where that trend has finished.
Because the problem is, right, if your underlying numbers say something and you underperform it with the actual points or goals that you're getting, then you can say, well, what we're doing makes sense. You can see that it should be producing results.
Even if you're not getting those results.
If you're not getting them. So you can sort of work out, well, it's a good thing with the project that's kind of working. But if consistently you are hitting exactly what your underlying numbers say, or, I mean, over it and you're still doing badly, it's bad.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose the only thing left is to place Wolverhampton Wanderers in our new re-prediction table, JJ. Last time you had them in 10th. Where are you moving them to?
I'm dropping them all the way down to 16th. I still think there's another team who are maybe worse than them in the relegation ones. but I also think that Gary O'Neill might be in trouble with his job. And I don't want it to happen, obviously. That's bad.
Right.
But, you know.
You don't sit at home wishing that people lose their job.
No, I feel sad for them.
Yeah.
In the same way they probably wish that I would lose my job. And maybe I will.
There's always every week. Now, Jon, what about you with Wolverhampton Wanderers? You had them in 15th. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I wasn't particularly sanguine about their chances before we started the season, and I'm feeling...
What did you say, penguin?
Sanguine.
Oh, sanguine. He said sanguine. I thought he said penguin.
I'm going to put them in 17th place.
They're going in 17th
I think
place.
they've got enough quality in that team to avoid relegation. And I think if it becomes a point in time where they think we could feasibly go down here, they will bring in a new manager and that will probably bounce them up.
Absolutely. Well, you've both kept them spare of relegation. There'll be a party in the Midlands tonight, Jon. Now, before we move on, let's hear from Phil Hay from the FC newsletter with something just a little bit interesting. What have you got for me, Phil?
You've heard of defensively parking the bus, but have you ever heard of parking the Ark? That's what FC Noah were planning to do at Chelsea on Thursday night. FC Noah from Armenia, and the name's not a coincidence. If you know your Bible stories, the tale of Noah's Ark finished on Mount Ararat, which is Armenia's national symbol. So anyway, off they went to Chelsea, and promptly lost 8-0. Didn't what really, but it was worth a try. If you like these weird and wonderful stories, or if you want football's biggest tales straight to your inbox every Monday to Friday, sign up to the Athletic newsletter now. It's all there.
Thank you very much, Phil. Well, indeed. Now, we'll move on to another team. Surprising, I would say, with how good they've been from a positive perspective. It's Fulham, Jon. It's Fulham. Now, Fulham not that far from where we expected in terms of predictions, but I mean they're good.
Yeah, their underlying numbers suggest they're doing things really well. And I think what really impresses me about Fulham is that they've started to find ways of consistently and sustainably generating chances. You may have seen the result in the midweek, which was against Brentford, where they came back very late on, 1-2-1 in that game. During that game, Fulham actually put up 43 crosses. So they're using crosses as a way of trying to break down teams.
Almost as many as that David Moyes Man United team that one time. What was that, 57 crosses?
A lot. Obviously, if you look at this cross map, Fulham were coming up against a Brentford team who went a goal ahead and then sat quite deep and blocked them out. And so a lot of these crosses actually are quite speculative. But if we look at the ones that were successful, that's the ones in purple, and then the ones that actually led to goals. What we can notice, if we take the corners kicks out as well, these crosses are actually coming from around these half spaces, so the channel in between the centre of the pitch and the outside of the pitch. You can see them on both sides. And actually what I've noticed going through a lot of Fulham's goals is that they are actually often getting into these kind of areas to generate chances. So I've just got a few screenshots. So this is the first goal against Brentford. Ball comes in. This is quite wide, so this isn't really from the half space. The ball comes in, and Harry Wilson's managed to get a really nice finish on it. This is the second goal, though. Here we've got Anthony Robinson in that half space in the penalty box, and then he finds Harry Wilson for the winner. So half space penalty box chance. And if we just go through the season, there's just so many of these examples. So this is the Jimenez back heel, really nice. He's in that half space, finds a player in the middle. So again, consistently getting the ball into these half spaces and then playing them through to strikers. Again, half space, goes to Jimenez, finishes really nicely. This one's just outside, but it's close enough, right?
Oh, it counts.
That one counts. And then here's another one, a really nice one. They get Iwobi into the half space. He plays Smith Rowe in, runs into this space and scores. So consistently getting into those half spaces in the penalty box to then be able to find these passes which can then be scored. And also, there's a couple of examples of them actually finding those spaces and the player on the ball then can just go directly and score. So Reece Nelson here scoring against Leicester, and then Alex Iwobi in the Leicester game as well, getting into that half space in the penalty area and putting the ball in. So I thought it was really interesting that one of the reasons why I think Fulham have really nice underlying numbers in terms of their attacking output is because they've found a way of consistently getting into these kind of areas to either generate direct goal chances or set their teammates up as well. And I think that's reflected in why they're doing so well this season. This is 8 chances here. They scored 14 goals this season, so that's more than 50% of their goals being scored from these kind of positions.
Okay, thanks, Jon. Well, Fulham are currently 9th in the Premier League table. JJ, you had them at 16th. Jon, you had them at 13th. Jon, let's start with you. Where will Fulham be moving to, if at all?
I'm going to bump them up a little bit, but I'm going to keep them behind Forest because Forest have had a better start to the season. So could go either way here, but I think they're well worth their position. So I think they'll be around that mid-table spot.
Okay, and what about you, JJ? Presumably you're quite surprised given that you put them in 16th.
Yeah, I'm basically doing what Jon did exactly. I'm putting them into 11th. Also, I think I made my prediction before they signed a few players that made them a bit better in the window. But yes, they are better than I thought they were going to be.
And that's a +6 mover for you. The only team with a bigger movement is Forest, +7. So it's fun that the two bottom half table teams that have done so well are the ones that you predicted to just narrowly avoid the relegation. So it's funny how that's happened, isn't it, John?
It is funny.
It is very funny, yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to give you an opportunity now to refill in your new tables from 7th down, please. Will you move the teams in to fill out 8 to 20 in your empty slots there? Okay, well, next, let's do 3rd to 6th, JJ. 3rd to 6th. Very exciting now. Will you please arrange your teams from 3rd to 6th, and then once we can see them, we'll chat about them.
On 6th place, I have...
Aston Villa.
That's correct. I have Aston Villa in 6th position.
Then you've got Spurs in 5th.
That's correct.
Then Chelsea in 4th.
Yeah. And then the big one.
Arsenal in 3rd.
Yeah.
Wow. Are we going to see something similar with John? Let's find out. John, for your re-predicted, in 6th you've got Villa. 5th you've taken Spurs as well. 4th you've also taken Chelsea. And would you believe it? 3rd you've also taken Arsenal. So you've predicted exactly the same from 3rd to 6th. I mean, I don't know. Arsenal's probably the big place to start there. Is it as simple as it sounds? They just haven't performed to expectations so far?
Yeah, I feel like they've just dropped a few too many points. I think the loss of Odegaard has proven way more important than I even thought it would, and I thought it would be important when they lost him. I think the reliance on defensive and set pieces is maybe too heavy, but also they just haven't managed to get over the line. I think they need things to go their way for certain things to work, and they don't have the control of games in the way I would like them to be able to actually dominate and go forward.
Let me put something to both of you, though, because we know that Martin Odegaard is coming back from injury, will probably feature in the team at the weekend. They've had a bit of an injury. I wouldn't call it necessarily a crisis, but some key injuries earlier on in the season. Do you not think that we might see that kind of resilience, that ability to control games come back from now on? I mean, do you think if we did this exercise again in 10 weeks' time, you'd both look just as stupid as you look now?
I'm not beating myself up about having Arsenal starting at the top of the league and then moving them down, because they've just had such an outlier 10 games. I mean, 3 of those games they were down to 10 men. They've lost Odegaard obviously for a chunk, lost Saka for a bit as well. They've had just an awful start to the season, but I still have them as a top 3, I would say, with Man City and Liverpool as well. So I just expect that now that they're starting from that points buffer slightly lower, they're probably not going to overcome it by the end of the season. But I still think they'll perform at the same sort of level. Yeah,
I genuinely have the top 3. I think all of those 3 are the ones who will win the league. And it could be any one of those 3. All of them have plus points and negatives, and it's hard to pull them. But I feel like from watching Arsenal and the other 22 at the moment, that's why I put them there.
I'm laughing because the direct quote was all of those 3 are the ones that will win the league.
They will, yeah.
It's a very positive way of looking at a league competition. Listen, I'm not going to keep us hanging around any longer. You've both picked the same top 2. You've both picked the same order of the top 2. You're both saying now Manchester City are going to win the league. This is what you said 10 game weeks ago. This is not what you said 10 game weeks ago. And it's a funny time to make this prediction, John, because Man City right now look worse than they have done for years.
Yeah, off the back of 3 losses across various competitions, most recently losing to Sporting. Ruben Amorim has managed to beat Pep Guardiola, which is good narrative. But yeah, I think, again, this could go either way. Like City, Liverpool, I think you could position either of these 2 either way around. City look like they can barely scrape a win at the moment, but they'll sort it out and they'll become a little bit more solid. And even in the games that they're playing where they're losing, they're still creating enough to win games. What they've lost is the ability to control a game when they lose the ball, and that is just meaning that they're getting counted on all the time and they just look super frail. So yeah. Liverpool, I think, I'm still unsure about Liverpool. It's still only 10 games in. It is still a small sample size.
They didn't beat Chelsea, their first big challenge.
Yeah, I thought they played well in that game. I'm just not sure at the moment that Liverpool are as consistent as their results have been. So, yeah, if they continue with this momentum through the whole season, then they'll definitely be there as title contenders. This is what happened at the end of last season as well, though. They fell away right at the end. And for me, that's the interesting question. Are they going to be consistent enough to be able to maintain that kind of challenge? But, I mean, I can see it happening because Man City and Arsenal are at a lower level than they were last season. So I think that just puts everything on a level pegging, really. So, yeah, it's Liverpool's title challenge as much as it's Manchester City's.
I think Man City will win the league because they always do that. I think also most seasons they do go through a little bit of a run where they just lose random games in a little spell. And I imagine Guardiola will correct the mistakes that I think now appear quite obvious. I think John spotted them a long time ago with the counter-attack vulnerabilities that they have. But you can even see it in the numbers, like of the touches in the attacking third in the Premier League, there's about 5 Man City defenders in the top third. They're really high up the pitch. So that's one part of it, that's not the only part, but they're able to be counted against. You saw it against Sporting quite a lot. So there are vulnerabilities there, as there always have been. They're missing lots of players with injuries, yes. Rodri's an enormous loss. I think Guardiola will be able to find ways to solve that puzzle and fix that. Liverpool look much better than I thought they would. I feel like when they come around to the second half of fixtures, teams will play in a different way to how they did in the first one. I don't know exactly what that will mean, but I think they will find ways to make it more difficult for them. And then they'll go through a run where they also have a few results in a row, which will make us think of the same way we're thinking of Man City. And Arsenal, I just think, will recover from this blip and be right in amongst it, but they may already have lost just a couple too many points to do it, which is why I think all 3 of Man City, Liverpool and Arsenal could win the league. And I don't know which one, but it will be Man City.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to some of the world's best sports journalists, including David Ornstein, Amy Lawrence and James Horncastle. With the latest transfer news and insights on every Premier League story that matters, theathletic.com puts you inside football, and you can try it for free now for 30 days. See the link in the description.